spent many years depressed and unhappy between the ages of 18 to 25. Just because that's how I was living then didn't mean I was condemned to live like that for the rest of my life. What it actually meant was that once I recognized it, I could create a experience of something else. And that experience is entirely different now. I wasn't fixed in that identity. What's up and welcome to my channel. My name's Alex, I'm a coach, and this podcast is all about self-development and helping you to live a happier and more fulfilling life. And if you like what you hear in this episode, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. So on this week's In Focus session, I wanted to share something with you that has been a massive learning for me, or a massive insight rather, that I've had in the last maybe 2-3 weeks or so. And it's around the separation of self. And that might sound really deep to some of you. So let me explain, right? So you'll hear me talking a lot about the spiritual self or consciousness or zero or something in that essence. And then we've got the personal self, which is like me, Alex, the ideas I have about myself, the stories, the way that I'm showing up in the world, the things I like to do, the things I want to create. And it looks like these two things are really two separate things. It looks like there's the spiritual self and the personal self, and we can be more personal self or more spiritual self, or less one, less the other, whatever. And I've found that recently I've got really stuck in this idea of like, well, if I'm the spiritual self, which is the oneness, the consciousness, the energy of the universe, whatever you want to call it, unconditional love, and all of this stuff, then why, as the personal self, do I want things? Do I feel like there's things I want to do, want to achieve? Because if I'm already on one hand in the spiritual self, whole and complete, then why is it that I would want or need or feel a desire to do anything? To create a business, to create a podcast, to go traveling, to have a partner, to, buy things that I like to buy, to, watch movies that I like to watch. Because from the spiritual self, it doesn't seem to make sense, but from the personal self, it does. But the more that I've looked into the direction of like the things that I want to create from the personal side of stuff, I've been looking at it from the space of like, well, do I really want that? Because I don't really need it. If I'm already whole and complete, I don't need it. And I've been like separating these two things as like, this is the spiritual self and this is the personal self. But what I've really started to see recently is that they're actually more combined. They're as one. They can't be separated as two individual things. They're one thing appearing as two separate things. And what I mean by that is that the spiritual self, yes, is a part of us, is a part we're always going to be connected to. And that spiritual self is allowing us to have a personal experience. If we didn't have the awareness, the consciousness, if we weren't connected to the one, I wouldn't be having this experience as Alex right now. You wouldn't be having the experience as you right now. So the spiritual self allows us the tools to have the personal experience. And then the personal self allows us to be aware of the spiritual self. You can't have one without the other. It's like trying to take a photo of something without the camera or a subject. You need both in order to capture a photo. You can't just have one of the two things because it doesn't work. You can't just have the subject because then you can't take the photo. And if you've got the camera and you don't have a subject, what are you using the camera for? It's both they look like separate things. This is the camera, this is the photo. They look very separate, but they're actually one in the same. They are used to create one in the same thing. The same way that we use our spiritual self don't say use it, but our spiritual self allows us to create the sense of personal self, and that personal self is allowing us to be aware of the greater spiritual self. Now, how does this play out when it comes to what do we want? What do we want to create? How do we want to live our lives? For me, and I'm going to speak personally, I want to, as Alex, how I'm experiencing life, I want to be of service to people. I want to help people. Therefore, I have this podcast. Therefore, I created a coaching business. There's a bunch of other stuff that I also like to do. I like football. I like anime. I like movies. I like walks in the park. I like dogs. Who doesn't? Oh, maybe we won't go there because I'm sure someone will say they don't. They're all things that are very personal to me. It's going to be very different to you. It's going to be very different to the person next to you or your partner or your parents or your friends or whatever. That's the personalized version of ourselves. And the beautiful thing is that when we're looking in the direction of the spiritual self is pointing us to the fact that there is an infinite, unlimited source of that spiritual self that is allowing us to create this human experience as me, Alex, as you. Now, we can use that unlimited source to create the personal self into anything that we want. It's up to our decisions and our choice in some way in how we want to show up and who we want to create ourselves as. Now, because we've created ourselves as X person, doesn't mean we're fixed in that. That is fluid. It's interchangeable because in any moment we're still being the unlimited of the spiritual. Therefore, we can create ourselves into something more or something that is, maybe a little bit different to what we've already been creating ourselves as. And there's a freedom to that. And that freedom allows us to do the things that we want to do. It gives us the freedom to, I like to travel. So as me, Alex, the personal self, wants to experience different cultures, different languages, wants to see different parts of the world that I haven't seen before. That's a personal choice. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's better or worse than anyone else's choices. It's my personal choice. And that personal choice is something that I have decided that I like. Now, when we're looking at this, it's kind of looking at it from the point of like, well, if the two things can't be separate, we are both infinite, which is the spiritual, and also finite, which is the personal, then we get to mix and blend the two together. We confuse the two things as one because they are one. So, in the finite experience of a human being, we have the unlimited capability to create whatever experience we want. We can live our life however we want. Just because it means, we've lived our lives in this way for many years doesn't mean that we're stuck like that. And I'll use my story as an example of that. I spent many years depressed and unhappy, it was between the ages of 18 to 25. From what I know, it might have been before that. Just because that's how I was living then didn't mean that I was condemned to live like that for the rest of my life. What it actually meant was that once I recognized it, I could create a experience of something else. And that experience is entirely different now. I wasn't fixed in that identity or that way of being or as that personal self. There was flexibility to create it. And that came through that infinite source. That infinite source, unlimited source, allows us to shape reality, our personal reality, in any way in which we want. Now, if it was fixed, I would still be like that today. But it's not. I'm proof of that. I'm proof that it's not a fixed thing. We can create what we want to create ourselves into. And again, there's a freedom to that because you might not want to create yourself into something else. You might want to. I don't know. But there is a freedom to it. And the freedom is the exciting part. But like I said, there's also limitation within that. The limitation, the finite of the personal is we are limited to our experience as a human being. I don't have the sharp eyesight of a hawk. I don't have the keen hearing of I don't know, what has good hearing? A dog. I don't have the sense of smell of a dog, I have the sense of smell of a human. I have the eyesight of a human and I have the hearing of a human. They're the limitations that I have. And the ways in which I can experience life are limited to the human experience. But it doesn't mean I'm still not connected to the greater whole. It doesn't mean because there's things that I can't see and sound waves I can't pick up on and smells that I can't smell that they don't exist. They are also a part of me. And that infiniteness, if that's a word, is also ingrained in me as a human in this experience of life. Now, what I'm trying to get at in this is saying that wherever you are in your life, however you are currently showing up, you can create yourself into anything that you want to. And something that I like to do around this, right, is like in my relationship, for example, I am committed to being the best partner I can be for my girlfriend. Whenever something's happening, when we're texting, when we're communicating, when we're spending time together, I will ask myself two questions. The first question is, who am I being right now? Am I being the most committed partner ever? And if the answer to that is one that I don't like, who do I need to be right now in order to be the most committed partner to my girlfriend? That's the second question. And then there's an optional third question there. What could I be doing to commit in the way that I would like to? And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, like we're going to, do X, Y, and Z. It's just the way in which I'm showing up. It could be the quality of my attention, quality of my presence, the quality of my love towards her. That's it. And those 2-3 simple questions allow me to create myself as something that I'm possibly not being in that moment. And we can do that in any realm of life, in any walk of life. Who am I being right now with regards to my health and fitness goals? Who am I being right now within my job? Who am I being right now as a son? Who am I being right now as a friend? There's so many ways that you can ask yourself that question, so many areas of life you can ask yourself that question. And if the answer is one that doesn't feel aligned to who you want to be and who you're choosing to be and how you want to show up in life, you can use in that moment that infiniteness of the spiritual self to create a different version of the personal self. So I'd love to know like what you're getting from this, what you're getting from me sharing this. I create these episodes because I want to open conversation. I don't just want to talk to my new fancy microphone, my new fancy camera in my new fancy place. I want to open conversation. So I would love to know from you what you're getting from this episode. What's the one learning that you're taking from this episode, and how would you like to implement that learning in your life? Hit me up on Instagram, DM me at I am Alex Manzi, and let me know. I'd love to have the conversation with you and share more about what's been helpful for me. And if you know someone who you think would benefit from hearing this episode, share it with them, give them the link, the screenshot, whatever it may be, because I started this podcast to help inspire a positive change in the world. And you can be a part of that by sharing this episode with someone you know today. So I want to thank Michele Azzu for producing and editing this episode. I want to thank Hobgoblin for providing the sick music that you hear. And as always, I want to thank you for spending time with me today. And I'll see you for the next episode.